Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Think you don't have enough space to grow vegetables? There are some compact plants available now. Also, if you want to kill weeds without pulling, you use a herbicide. Today we're going to go over the basics. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Dr. Natalie Baumgartner. Dr. Baumgartner is a residential and consumer horticulture specialist with UT Extension. And Mr. D is here.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us today. All right. So, Dr. Natalie, we were talking about compact vegetables. You brought a nice display of those compact vegetables.
Samples with us here today. We give a lot of FaceTime for tomatoes and peppers. There are a lot of great options in compact tomatoes and peppers these days. We have the baby snackers. We even have some beautiful striped sweet peppers here. These are called candy cane. Even the leaves actually are variegated. These may be one of my favorite plants in the trial this year. And even compact eggplants. These are called a Hansel. There's also a Gretel. That's white that matches those.
I got it.
Patio baby. So we have lots of nice 18 to 24-inch plants that can go in raised beds, containers, very easily.
Okay. Now, can we talk a little bit more about those tomatoes that you grew?
Let's talk about those little tomatoes.
Let's do that.
So we really have some really cool options in the ranges of small fruited tomatoes. There are very compact 12, 18-inch plants. I think we have a good picture of one that's called Little Bing. It's a determinate tomato that fruits heavily. It can bear really well for a short period of time. We also, if you're looking for a little bit larger fruit and a little bit larger plant, Home Slice is also a nice compact plant. And then there are even some dwarf indeterminate tomatoes, right?
Are you getting this, Mr. D?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dwarf
got you.
indeterminate.
I mean,
How about that?
keeps on growing.
Yeah, and keeps on.
It's still
producing
little,
flower,
but it
fruiting.
gets bigger.
Right. So his leaves are just really close together, and so we have some of those. Now these are not going to produce the fruit that you would expect out of a Brandywine or one of our 8-foot tall indeterminates, but they can produce over a longer period of time, produce nice beefsteak-looking fruit, and perform well in a container.
Yeah,
So
that's the big thing. They have to do better in a container than, I'm not having any luck at all trying to grow regular tomatoes in a container, but a small dwarf tomato ought to work better in a container.
Yeah, and so you'll still need a pretty good soil volume to get them to perform well, but you don't have to do near as much work to string them up.
Okay.
What about soil, for growing these tomatoes? Does it matter?
For the most part, my trials are actually in soil, so they can perform well in high-quality garden soil. But most of the time in containers, we'll think of a well-drained organic mix, a pro mix mixed with some compost or a little bit of, pine bark chips and things like that to get a little bit larger particle size.
Sure.
Pro Mix peat can compact over the course of a season if you have it in a large container.
Oh, good stuff. Now, what about the peppers? Let's talk about the peppers.
Yeah, so the peppers, I already mentioned a little bit about candy cane, variegated fruit and leaves. That'll be available in the market next year. And then we have some of the baby bells. So this is called Eros. And then some of the other cool options that we have on the market are combination plants that are both ornamental and edible. And so these are called Pretty and Sweet. So you can see, a nice, compact, bright, small pepper, but they're also on a plant that has variegated color fruit, a nice compact plant that could be great in a container. And we also have some hot peppers called Black Hawk, Black Pearl, that produce really small hot fruit with dark leaf. So there are a lot of options, not just for the back porch, for the front porch too.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good. Now you have some eggplant?
Yeah, these are Hansel, and they're paired with Gretel. These are about a 2-foot tall plant that produce these nice small fruit. Patio baby's another example of an eggplant. I think we have a picture
Yeah.
of it that has a really small egg-shaped fruit, 2 or 3 inches, and it's ready for harvest. So these are very productive over the course of a season, but very compact and good for containers.
Wow. So folks are going to really enjoy growing these plants, right?
You can get a pretty good selection for your kitchen right there on the back porch.
Now, when are all these going to be available, though, for folks to actually start planting and growing?
So candy cane is an example of one that'll be on the market,
Wow,
but
okay.
Patio Baby actually won the All-American selections in
cool.
2015, so it's available on the
Okay.
market now. Pretty and Sweet's a recent All-American selections winner. So most of these, the Little Bing, the Home Slice, most of those are on the market now.
Okay.
So folks can order the seeds. You may not be able to find them in a garden center. This
Okay.
may be a thing where you'll want to start your own transplants.
Okay. So these have been trialed throughout the state, or, I mean, how are you working
Right,
on
yeah.
that?
So for some of our tomato and pepper plants, we have iDo trials in Knoxville, but also
Okay.
we have several of these being trialed in demo gardens, Master Gardener demo
Right,
gardens
good.
across the state. So I grew a lot of transplants and shipped them out to those places so that they can give us feedback on what they like across the state. Just because it does well in Knoxville doesn't mean it'll do well in Memphis. or,
Exactly right.
Yeah, Nashville.
Mr. D knows about the different zones that we have here. For sure.
Right.
And another one of the cool things that we're working on we've kind of pilot tested it this year, but we're going a little bit bigger next year, will be a home garden variety trial so that we have the opportunity for people in their own backyards to try combinations of cultivars that we know perform relatively well, but we really want to know what they do across Tennessee. So we'll just send them matched sets of pairs of cultivars of any of the cucumber, zucchini, a lot of beans that they want to try, and they'll let us know at the end of the season how they do.
Now tell me this, how did you go about choosing these cultivars, though?
Well, initially, these selections were made based on disease resistance, visual appeal, right? We can't ignore the
Right,
fact
right.
that, you know.
It's gotta look
pretty
good. They look like Christmas ornaments. You hate that. That's too pretty, man.
Yeah. So we can't ignore the visual appeal, and how well they fit into spaces. So we're thinking about, do these work for raised beds, or are these better for a gardener that has a larger home garden plot? So those are the kinds of feedback that we're asking from folks. What do they look like? What do they taste like? How early did they fruit? And general aspects on yield. We're not asking everybody to send us back data sheets.
Right. So how has that feedback been, though? Have you gotten back some of that feedback
We
already?
have. We've gotten back some of that feedback, and folks have been excited to give us their opinions. And so by the end of September, we'll be getting a lot of those notes back. And from that, then we'll make the decision over what the cultivars are that we grow next year. So we'll keep some of the same ones, the things that performed well, but if we have some that didn't go over real well across Tennessee, we'll swap them out and grow some things that people are more interested in. So we want this to be dynamic. It changes through time to suit people's needs.
Good deal. I think we even have Mr. D convinced now.
He's going to be a participant next year. I
sounds
can
good.
tell. I
Sounds
think he's
good.
going to be an evaluator.
I'm into edible landscaping. Yeah, I like to be able to eat things I try to take care of.
See, there you go.
Yeah, we always want the payoff.
I think we got one now. Appreciate it, Dr. Nally. That's
Yeah,
good stuff.
thanks.
Good stuff.
The annuals we had planted earlier this spring have not done well. Now the salvia looks pretty good. The petunias do not seem to like to be under irrigation. It's pretty squishy wet here, and they don't like to be wet. So they have not done well. The few marigolds that are left are doing pretty good on the sunnier side of the bed, but salvia likes this condition, petunias, not so much.
All right, Mr. D, we talk a lot about herbicides. So let's give the folks herbicide basics, and some terms are involved as well.
That's right. And let's just start out by saying, all herbicides are pesticides, but not all pesticides are herbicides,
Okay.
right?
All right.
Okay. All Volkswagens are cars, but not all cars are Volkswagens, right?
We got
so,
you.
so herbicide is anything that'll kill a plant. And there are several different herbicides out there. We have pre-emergent herbicides that will actually prevent a weed from coming up, or when it comes up, it'll kill it in the process of it germinating and coming up. And then there are post-emergent herbicides, and those are the herbicides that you apply to weeds or to plants to kill that are already up and growing. A couple of examples of pre-emergent herbicides would be pyropendimethalin or Treflan, or they're examples of pre-emergent herbicides that you put out there early, usually earlier in the year. And some of the pre-emergent herbicides for lawns you'll put out in the fall to take care of the winter weeds and things like that. Post-emergent herbicides are the ones that, you got weeds growing out there and you go out there and you try to kill them. Glyphosate, Roundup is an example of a post-emergent herbicide. Cefoxidim is another. And there are a lot of, there are probably more post-emergent herbicides out there than there are pre-emergent herbicides. It's good to use both of them to get the best results. If you use a combination of pre and post-emergent herbicides, you'll probably do a better job. There are contact herbicides that kill a plant when you spray it on there. Gramoxone is an example of a contact herbicide that you can cover half of a leaf and spray half of it with Gramoxone, and that half of the leaf that you spray will die, and the other half that you cover will not. Then there are systemic herbicides, and these are herbicides that are taken up by the green tissue of the plant and translocates throughout the plant and will kill the entire plant. Glyphosate is an example of a systemic herbicide. Trade names are Roundup is a trade name, Post is a trade name, and the active ingredient of Roundup is glyphosate, and the active ingredient of Post is cefoxidim. And many times there are a lot of different trade names for one active ingredient. I mean, glyphosate, there are probably hundreds of products out there now that have glyphosate.
Plenty generic.
Same thing with cefoxidim. There are a lot of different trade names. Vantage is another example of a trade name of cefoxidim. Roundup is even, it's a Monsanto product, but now there's a Roundup that doesn't have glyphosate in it.
Yeah.
So
For lawns,
Yeah, so you've got to be careful. You've got to read the label. It's very important with any of the herbicides, you read the label. There are different categories of toxicity with herbicides, and some of them are pretty toxic to humans if you ingest them. Some of them are toxic if you ingest them, and they're not toxic dermally. Some of them are toxic dermally. You get them on your skin and it can hurt you. Again, the label will explain that. Let me give you an idea of the difference in the toxicity levels of some of the herbicides here. Here we are. There are only a couple of highly toxic herbicides that are out there on the market, and I'm not sure that they are still on the market. Baypam was a soil, I'm trying to think the term, it was a soil sterilant for nematodes that you put in the ground to basically control nematodes, and I'm not sure Baypam is still on the market.
Yeah, I didn't heard of it.
The active ingredient is metham. Sodium arsenate is another one that we used to use to control insects in cotton, and I don't think that's on the market anymore. No. But those are highly toxic herbicides, and highly toxic herbicides on the label will have the signal word. There are signal words that very briefly describe how toxic a herbicide is, and other pesticides also. But danger/poison with skull and crossbones, that is the most toxic of the herbicide. If you see that, lock it away somewhere. And you probably can't buy it as a homeowner unless you have a restricted use permit.
Right.
Or
it would mostly just be the issue of people happening upon something that was still in an old building or something, and that's where they'd need to be careful.
If you see a skull and crossbones, you just kind of stay away from it. It's probably not a pirate ship.
No.
There are moderately toxic herbicides, and the signal word for that is warning.
Okay.
And the difference between highly toxic and moderately toxic is the lethal dose of a highly toxic herbicide, or LD50, is the lethal dose required to kill 50% of the animals in the population. It's probably mostly rats.
Right.
We don't check it with humans. Highly toxic is less than 50. And will kill half of the rats in a population. You know, if you got 50 rats out there, it should kill 25 of those rats.
Okay.
Moderately toxic herbicides, it's 50 to 500.
Okay.
And examples of things that you and I are around every day that have that level of toxicity are caffeine.
Yeah.
You know, if you have that much caffeine, gasoline,
Gas, right,
kerosene.
know those.
Some herbicides are Avenge, Aquathol. Some aquatic herbicides carry that much toxicity, which
Yeah.
to mammalian toxicity. But mammalian toxicity is different from fish and organisms. So some of the things are more toxic to us than they are to aquatic organisms. Slightly toxic herbicides, and there are a lot more of those than there are of the highly toxics. The LD50 for them is 500 to 5,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. And the signal word on the label will just be caution, so be careful. Probable lethal dose for a 150-pound person is 1 ounce to 1 pint or 1 pound. Could, if you ingest it.
Right.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I try to avoid eating
Right,
herbicides, you know, most of the time.
Right.
Infrequent.
But aspirin is something that carries that same lethal dose
Okay.
designation. Table salt carries
salt,
that
yeah.
same lethal designation. But herbicides, Abasagran, Command, 2,4-D,
Yeah, familiar with that.
2,4-DB, Cethoxidem,
Yeah,
Host,
as
you
we
know,
talk
I
about
mentioned
all the
that.
time, right.
Dicamba
Yes.
carries that same level of toxicity. Vinegar is another something on our tables that carries that same. It's acetic
Which often
acid.
comes up when we talk about what are some potentially organic herbicides.
Right.
And we
And
need
vinegar
to
is
keep
the
in
first
mind.
thing that
That's
yeah,
acidic.
comes up.
Acetic acid. It's
Right.
Yeah, acetic acid.
So yeah. Then almost non-toxic herbicides, they carry LD50 of greater than 5,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. Lethal dose of almost non-toxic herbicide for a 150-pound person is more than 1 pint or 1 pound. That's a pretty full meal.
That's a
know, you
lot,
gotta-
man.
Roundup,
Roundup,
glyphosate, Touchdown, Rodeo, or a couple other products that have glyphosate in them. Arsenal, Chopper, Scepter, Pursuit. You know, there's this page, Treflan, Princep. So most of the herbicides that you can buy on the shelf fit within the almost non-toxic. You know, most of them are in that category.
Right,
things
because
that you
most
buy
of
on the
those are
shelf.
going to contain 2,4-D, you know, for the most part, or dicamba.
Right,
You know,
right.
which would be your post-emerge herbicides.
But one thing I want to mention, in this last list that I listed, they were almost non-toxic. I kind of scanned over that, and I saw 2 herbicides in there that are restricted use pesticides. But it's not because of their mammalian toxicity, it's because that they will very easily go off site.
Right.
If get rain right after you put it out, it can
Non-target
kill
effects.
desirable plants.
Right.
Right. But a lot of different herbicides out there. Just read the label. That's
the
the take-home point. Read and follow the label.
Thank you, Mr. D. It's good stuff. Read and follow the label, folks. Appreciate that, Mr. D.
Looking at our blueberry here, looks like it's kind of putting the brakes on, getting ready for wintertime. Got a little weed here, a little tree that's trying to grow. We'll get that out of the way. I'm not going to really do anything to it at this point. I am going to prune the dead limbs out of it. It's got 2 or 3 dead limbs here. I don't know why they died, but we're going to go on and get them out of the way. That's one. Do the same thing with this other limb over here. And then we have one, like a 4-inch shoot here, and I'm not even going to get it. I'm going to try to stay out of the green tissue. Just take that off. Did a pretty good job with that. And I'm just going to leave that alone. If the leaves are starting to change color, days are getting shorter, we're getting closer to fall. One thing you definitely do not want to do is apply fertilizer right now. We don't want a flush of new growth because, believe it or not, in a few weeks we're probably going to get a killing frost. It's 90 degrees out here today, and we're probably going to get a killing frost within 3 weeks or so. But in the fall of the year, we don't do a lot with blueberries.
All right, this is our Q&A session. Dr. Nally, you jump in there and help us out, all right?
Certainly.
All right, here's our first viewer email, and these are some good questions, by the way. Here's our first one. I have had overnight company several times in my flower beds. What animal did this? And this is from Miss Katie. So get a good look at that there, Mr. D. What animal do you think may have caused that?
That is a good question. Does she have a game camera? With something like that, I'd like to put a game camera up out there and see if you could figure out what it really is. But I would, the first thing that crossed my mind because of the shape of the holes was and the neatness around them and all that was an armadillo.
Very neat.
And the size.
And the size of it, but you know, squirrels will do the same thing.
Yeah.
They're very curious and they're looking for stuff and they can do the same thing. I would, if it's an armadillo, you should have some other holes probably out in your yard.
Yeah.
You know, where they're
rooting,
because mostly they're looking for grub worms and
earthworms.
things like that, earthworms and things like that. And so you should have other holes out in the dirt and you know, or out in other areas of your yard. If it's just there in your bed, maybe
Might think something
a
else.
squirrel came swinging by and thought
They
he
look large
remembered
for a
that he left a
squirrel.
nut there last winter or something and is checking it out.
Coming by to check it out.
But really, to answer your question, I'm not sure, but it probably either a squirrel or an armadillo.
All right, so we have Miss Kathy. Hope that helps you out. Here's our next viewer email. It says, hello, Dr. Chris. Can you tell from these pictures what the problem is with my 3 miniature crepe myrtles? This started happening in the last 2 weeks, and this is from Eloise in Cookville. So she has pictures there, crepe myrtles. Looks like to me, you definitely see a lot of honeydew. So the first thing that jumped in my mind, crepe myrtle aphids. What do you think?
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it's hard to really see any insects for certain, but looking at the honeydew and the presence of insects on the leaves. And one thing that I'm sure you'd want to point out is the difference between the leaves and the stem. Where we're
Right,
seeing
so
that
if they were
insect
on
feeding.
the stems, I'm glad you mentioned that. If they were on the stems, of course, crepe myrtle bark scale, bark scale. But these are on the leaves, which makes me think aphids.
Because with a heavy presence of bark scale, you could see some of that honeydew
You can
on
see
lower
honeydew.
leaves.
You sure could.
But we're seeing the insects themselves.
Actually on the leaves.
Yeah.
And
So
you're
I
seeing
think
the
that's
honeydew on the top too. on the
Right.
top of the
Right,
leaf.
Yeah.
right. And it's pretty well covered there in those pictures, so that's a problem.
Yeah. That looks like some pretty heavy
Yeah,
feeding.
yeah, I think that's a problem. Get out the hose. You know, you can knock them off with a stream of water, or you can use the insecticidal soaps. There's some oils you can use, horticulture oil, neem oil, or
Neem
something
or
else.
extracts from neem, the
Right.
azadirachtin type products
Those
are all
work well,
soft.
right? And then lastly, Mr. D,
Systemic insecticides.
systemic insecticides, right? And
Yeah.
metocloprid comes to mind as
Right.
something that you can use for that. Do read and follow the label, but
That's right.
Yeah.
I think all of those could work.
Yeah.
Just
Several
fine.
paths depending on your preference.
Right,
That's right.
Because it looked like she had several, in that area. I think she said 3 miniatures.
Yeah,
so.
it looks like they're planted close together, so a drench could be effective.
Yep.
Yeah, because you can get all 3 of them.
Yeah.
All right, so there you have it, Miss Eloise. We appreciate the question from Cookville. Thank you much. All right, here's our next viewer email. What is the best way to germinate and grow ginkgo trees from seed? And this is from Chuck right here in Memphis. So look, Doc, he wants to grow ginkgo trees, right?
Patient folks who are interested in growing trees from seed.
From
I must
seed.
admit that I'm really more of a just graft in and give me
Right.
something a little bit larger.
And I'm all for going to the nursery and picking out what you want and taking it home
Yeah.
and transplanting it. You
Yeah.
know.
Right.
Many of the ginkgos that we buy may actually well be grafted because for the most part we're trying to select male trees because of the, putrid sometimes scent of the female
Yeah.
with their seeds. And
Yeah, you'll definitely know if it's a female tree or not.
Yeah.
For sure.
After a while.
After a while. You're definitely right about that. But, I actually sat in a couple of propagation classes, at some of the gardens. If you want to do it by seed, of course.
certainly possible.
It's possible.
Yeah.
We're talking about warm stratification, cold stratification, though.
Yeah.
So you would have to, of course, separate the seed, from the fruit itself. Put the seeds in a bag with some sphagnum moss. That sphagnum moss has to be moist, of course. Ziploc bag, shake them up, room temperature, warm stratification, right? 68, 80 degrees. Then, after a couple of weeks, you put that in the bottom of your refrigerator where you keep your vegetables for the most part. There's your cold stratification. So anywhere, between 30 and 40 degrees,
Yeah.
maybe?
And I think a
like
normal
that.
refrigerator would normally be appropriate.
Right, and you have to do that for weeks and
Yeah.
weeks.
Simulating a
Winter.
fall to winter.
Right. I mean, that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then from there, depending on who you talk to or what publication you read, they're talking 10 to 12 weeks. And then they germinate. You can either put them in the potting soil or you can put them outside.
Yeah.
There you have it. But again, you have to be patient
Right.
with that, Mr. Chuck.
Yeah, it's possible.
It's possible. Patience, but it
Yeah.
is possible. All right, Mr. D, Dr. Nally, we're out of time. Thanks for being here today.
All right, it's been
Good
fun.
stuff. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. We've posted more information about herbicides and compact vegetables on familyplotgarden.com. I'm Chris Cooper. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.